he says that it's able to change the perceptions and change the chemicals in your brain as your eye is awakened. He says Kundalini yoga in its essence is the most dangerous form of yoga. When things go wrong, they go seriously wrong in ways that you can't fix it. She's 19 years old. She found yoga on her own and got intrigued because of books and stuff that she saw online, so she started doing it. And then before long, she was having a Kundalini experience. She has signs of awakening of the Kundalini, and it manifests itself through her physical and psychologically. And some of the things that she reports is that she's feeling this vital energy in her body. It's coming from an outside force, and she just feels like she's the recipient. She describes it as feeling vibrations of prana in different parts inside the body, feeling electric-like currents flowing up and down the nerves, experiencing bliss, having divine visions, and getting inspiration and insight. Over months, she also expressed to have experienced eternal enlightenment. Her family members also believe these experiences to be the outcome of her yoga practices. However, the change in the patient was not seen as a deviance, but as an impact of yoga practice until she stopped eating, speaking, interacting with others, and was found frozen in sustained postures requiring medical attention. By the way, she never got cured.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us at LED Live. We have an awesome show with our special guest, Blessings Winn. She's going to tell us about how she used to be a licensed certified practitioner, teacher of yoga and meditation and all these things, and just where that journey has taken her, what she's found out about that whole lifestyle, the whole practice that millions of people are being sucked into. I mean, you see this stuff everywhere.
So if you're the type of person that believes like, I don't do all that spiritualistic stuff and all I do is just the exercise and stuff, this is a show for you. Please stay to the end. You're not going to want to miss this.
That's right.
Absolutely. So just to start out, I think I should definitely make a personal statement, and that is that my goal is not to offend anyone. I was a practitioner. I was sucked into yoga. I was devoted to the practice. I didn't understand that there was a spiritual component to it. I thought that it was just exercise. I didn't see a problem as a Christian doing it, and I didn't see it as a problem if you were secular and you weren't Christian. I just didn't see that there was anything to be worrisome about. And so it's really important that I make that personal statement that this is not a picking on yoga or its roots of Hinduism. This is just more of an informational package so that people who are partaking in it understand what they're stepping into, because it's not what they're being told. There's a lot of undisclosed information that you need to know. And I believe in a God that practices informed consent.
Amen.
My God, the creator Yahweh, he does not say to anyone, you are my servant, and it's that way or no way.
Right.
He says you have moral autonomy, you have the right to look at this doctrine, you have the right to accept it, or you have the right to walk away from it. And not so in the demonic realm. And so we're going to go into that.
If you're eating something and I know you're allergic to nuts and I say, look, it's on the package right here, nuts, I'm doing that out of love, not because I want to hurt your feelings. And you really like that brownie.
No.
I don't care how much you like it. I want to tell you that there's something harmful in there.
No. And this is, again, it's not to attack where Hinduism comes from. It's not to attack India or Indian people. I love Indian people. I loved my time in India. I love how sweet-natured they are. This is about a practice and a religion or a cult that's disguised as a religion and something that's good for you, and it's something that can lead you to quote-unquote salvation, but self-salvation, and it's not true. So honestly, if I had been given the information at the front end of my contract, I would have had an informed consent to participate. Unfortunately, none of that was presented to me. Everything that I was given was diluted and basically bastardized so that I was left blindfolded and walking in obedience to something that I had no idea was demonic.
Wow.
And again, this is not an offense to the culture or the group or people. This is about the spiritual side of yoga and what it really is about. So we need to be able to separate those two.
And you're not pointing the finger at others. This
is my
your
own
story.
experience. This is my story. You don't have to agree. I'm just giving you information that wasn't given to me, even though I spent time at an ashram, spent thousands of dollars to get these degrees in Ayurveda, in therapeutic yoga, in Ashtanga yoga, in in Pawana Muktasana, in what else? Ashtanga, did I say that? Therapeutic yoga, Iyengar yoga. I did not at any point get the information that I'm about to give to you. And the reason this is important is because a lot of people are licensed to show you or instruct you in yoga, but they themselves don't understand what they're teaching because it is almost created like a bar class. That's kind of how they're teaching it, devoid of the real practice, the veiled experience that comes with it. And so it's very important because you could be the reason to lead someone into mental illness, depression, anxiety.
Through yoga.
There's research. There's lots of pseudoscience involved in yoga, and most of it is unproven. It's just a way to get the Western side interested in it, right? And so you hear things like, oh, if you do, plow pose, it's going to, help with your thyroid function. Plow pose is a pose where you bring your legs over your head. And in effect, it cuts off the circulation to your thyroid gland. And so the yoga philosophy, westernized philosophy, is that you're cutting off circulation to your thyroid gland so that you can purge out the bad blood cells. And when you release the bind, right, that position, and you go back to normal, all this new blood rushes in and invigorates the endocrine system, the thyroid. But it's actually not true. Yoga is actually a practice for death.
Oh, wow.
It is a practice, again, for death.
Because life is in the blood and life is circulation.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if a lot of practices ever would teach you to cut off the circulation. That's interesting.
So again, and it's also something that in India, when I was in India, my time there, the Indian people really looked at us bizarre, like bewildered, like this is a bizarre situation. Like, you come here wanting enlightenment. We don't even practice this stuff. Like, we don't even do that. We don't want no parts of this, like.
They believe there's a direct spiritual connection.
Yes.
You cannot separate it. But in the Western world, they're like, well, I'm just stretching. And this particular, there was a guest on our show. He was
from India,
yoga instructor.
Ivan Raj.
Ivan,
yes, I know Ivan.
And so he was saying that they would feel offended over there.
Absolutely.
Because they're like, this is, like you said, this is our religion. And I remember, because I edited this video, you were saying, like, it's like someone coming into the Christian world saying, I want to be baptized, but I don't believe in your God or anything. I'm just going to...
I just like the ritual.
Yeah, so, like, that doesn't make sense.
And like you just said, that they saw stuff, people doing things that even they wouldn't do.
Yeah.
We had a guest one time, she was the same story, got into yoga, which led to meditation, which led to ascended masters and all these things. And she said she saw a website, pro website, not anti-yoga. It was all about Kundalini. And she said at the very top, it had these snakes and this big warning about Kundalini is dangerous. And this was from people who are teaching it. They're saying, if you practice this, be prepared for strange things that happen to your body and mind and everything.
Wow.
The sad thing is that it's not just Kundalini. Like, it's yoga, period. And so teachers, instructors, they're given this class kind of syllabus, exercise A, or I shouldn't say exercise, but they think it is. Pose A to pose Z. You need to get through this in an hour or an hour and a half format, and that's it. Talk a little bit about feelings. They teach you chants. You don't really know what you're chanting. You don't understand all of it, right? You don't understand the emptying your mind. So we're going to get into all of that. So to really, so
that's you.
These are all pictures of me in the practice. So I was definitely very devoted, and this is going into this was my first day at my school, and the school I don't want to plug, but it was a blank school of yoga and meditation, and the two main teachers there, one of them, his name was Mahesh, and Mahesh is a prominent name in the meditation world. And it is said that his great-great-great-grandfather, I believe, was the Maharishi Mahesh, who basically taught how to get into transcendental meditation. So this is 3 generations.
Which is using yoga to get there.
Using the methodology of Patanjali's 8-limb path. We'll get into that.
Okay.
So I'm here, and the reason I ended up here is because, again, I was teaching at all the prominent, the high-end clubs, so like your Club Sport, Equinox, the Studio, Yoga Works. I was one of the teachers to this day. If you look me up online, you're going to see, Blessings Winn or Blessings Robertson Winn, and it's going to immediately take you to yoga. Wow. And I was a very sought after teacher. I'm not patting my back. I'm just, telling you how deep I was into these things.
Yeah, you're a credible source to talk about this.
Right.
Question, that green book, I see that stick with the snake wrapped around. We see this.
Kundalini.
We see this in medical logos. What is that?
So yes, and so there's 2 ways to look at it. It's the serpent that healed,
Moses'
Moses' staff that healed the people who had been bitten by the snake. But then it's also been taken in the Gnostic world, and it represents secret knowledge.
Right. It's a rebranding.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the Moses, the rod with the serpent on there in Moses' day didn't have 2, and it didn't have wings. That's the Caduceus. When you look it up, that's Mercury holds that in his hand, and it says that he's the guide of the. He's the
god of the underworld.
Yeah, the god of the underworld. He heals the wicked people and stuff. Like he's the guide of the dead.
And he has the wings on his helmet.
Yeah.
And
so these are some of the textbooks that are on my table. This yoga journal was actually made by my yoga guru at the time that I was under, and that would be the Kundalini Shakti. Okay. So she is representative of that serpent that you see, the 2 serpents, right? Okay. So one is Shakti and one is Shiva, and you want the Kundalini energy to rise up your spine, which leads to samadhi.
Starts in your crotch area.
Yes. So we'll get into this.
I mean, that's really what they're saying.
I want to add. I wanted to describe what that is because I didn't have my train of thought, but that's the Caduceus held by Mercury, and it says that he's the god or the guide of the dead, protectors of liars, merchants, thieves. Like is a protector of wicked, and the guide of the dead.
Right.
And they're using the beginning stage of your sexuality to your mind.
Yes.
And it's like, it's very purposeful.
It's very perverted. So you'll see some of we'll get into this, but this is just like a synopsis, kind of like, this is a day in the life of me in yoga.
I think it's interesting that there's so much serpents in it. Serpents behind the Shiva, serpents on here. And it's all about inviting the serpent to your crown chakra. And in
the Bible,
might not sound alarming, but we as Christians do have a higher vantage point. We know who that serpent is, and you see all around the world people are worshiping dragons and serpents and things like that.
Right,
and in your face.
And the thing to remember is that there is the gospel, and then there is the counterfeit gospel. And God is the creator. And when I say God, I like to point out that I'm talking about Yahweh. I'm talking about Ruach. I am not talking about any other God, Shiva, Buddha, none of that. And what he does is he takes whatever God has and he just perverts it.
Yep.
The Shekinah glory, which we are the temple of God, right? So this body is really designed in a sort of way that the Jewish temple was laid out, that the most holy place was literally the place and seat of God.
Yes.
And it's very interesting to me that there's a snake that wants to sit in the very seat of your God.
Yes, in the holy, the highest and the holiest of holy. So this is where the journey really starts to take a turn. So basically, I was a very pronounced teacher, very well-known teacher back in the Bay Area, And a friend of mine was saying, oh, I'm going to do a cleanse, and, Seventh-day Adventists, we're into health and healing and cleansing. So I was like, sure, I'll do it with you. And I get introduced to this system called Pancha Karma. Pancha means 5. Karma meaning the works and the things that you can do to cleanse or to rid your body of. And so the Ayurvedic practitioner said to me, I really, like that you understand, the yoga postures. And she's saying it in a way that I think she assumed because I was reading up on it, and able to discuss it with her. But I don't think she understood that I didn't know the source. Okay. But she says to me, but you need real training. You need authentic training. And so she says, I want you to go and learn where I learned. And so she recommended this school, and that's how I ended up at the ashram, because she wanted to hire me on her staff to be able to prescribe yoga and Ayurvedic medicine to her, clients.
In California, but
In
she
California.
wanted you to go to India.
Right. So I go feeling honored.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, a doctor thought so well of me. So I'm like, let's do this. So I leave my family and I go to India for 2 months. And I end up at this ashram, and this is a yoga shala. So all of our classes were held between this yoga shala and another yoga shala. And this is basically a holy place. And what you can't see is that there are deities on some of these. There's one here, there's another here, here, here. And even those weren't alarms to me because honestly, they're ubiquitous in our culture.
Yep.
You go to a furniture
Good
store,
luck charms
you can pick it up.
Yeah. Buddha statue.
I
And
have
you're like,
them in
I'm
my
in
house.
another country and this is what they believe. So you dismiss it. Yep.
And that's the thing too, is that I really think we should be careful as travelers what we bring back home.
Yes.
Hey, this is so true. And I have this really weird, short, real world experience. My parents were missionaries when they first got married. And I remember we had a fish tank and we had a big, huge library, and they had brought in home a Buddha. And the Buddha was sitting by the fish tank, and we kept killing the fish in the fish tank. And it was really strange. And I remember thinking, as a kid, I always remember why do they have this God that's sitting there on the shelf? And it's kind of interesting.
And then this is my class schedule. And it basically shows you all of the training that I went through, all the different disciplines. And if you'll take note, 5:45 a.m., I have to be in that yoga shala. And at that time, I do something called karma yoga. And so they believe when you say yoga, this is another misconception people have. When you say yoga, people think it's just the asana, the posture practice. It's not. Yoga has several different branches of rites and rituals.
The meditation, the sort of...
The karma yoga, sweeping up, making sure it's clean.
So can I point this out?
Yes.
What if people had this kind of tenacity with religion?
I agree, 100%.
Like studying the Bible or something like this.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where would we be if people, whatever, you guys are just, making a big deal about it, or you
No.
want us to study the Bible all day?
Yeah.
People do this all day.
And I think it's really important to point out that people are comfortable, society is comfortable trashing Christians for their beliefs and their doctrine. They're very critical. Even amongst ourselves, we'll say, I'm not practicing Christianity because so-and-so was not Christian, what treated me poorly. But in reality, there's so many other religions and so many different adherents to those religions, and no one ever comes for those people for being bad within that religion.
Yeah, they think it's cool, and they're like, oh, good job, being so devoted.
Yeah, and there's no criticism. If there's respect, but Christianity, you get pushback.
If somebody doesn't adhere to the schedule, they don't I'm not going to be a yogist because this or whatever.
Yeah, so we had karma yoga, asana practice. Asana means actually doing the physical yoga. And then at 8:15, we would have breakfast. But during breakfast, it's not peaceful because you're studying. You're scarfing food and you're literally doing your assignments, and it's just really, it's almost like medical school, like no joke.
Crammed into
it's
this.
super crammed, and it's all new. It's not anything you even have heard of. You don't really know this stuff. And then you go into Ayurveda, which is the sister science of yoga. And it's basically nature worship and using herbs and plants to heal you. And then Yoga Nidra at 10 o'clock to 11:15, you'll see that slash. Yoga Nidra is a meditation style where basically you're introduced to hypnosis.
Wow.
And then teaching practicum at 11, you see teaching practicum asana methodology. This is where they start to, instead of you doing the postures, then they have you sit and they start to open up the literature to you. But the literature is redacted. It does not have all the deities and the dark. You don't get any of that. And then they have what's called non-contact hours from 2:30 to 4. And so this is you being abstemious. This is self-isolation, and that's really key to the practice of yoga, because people who practice the actual true yogis traditionally, they would remove themselves from society, become hermits, ascetics, yes, and they would just be by themselves. And then 4:15 you start at, and again, even the names, Shakti Whitehall. Shakti is the Kundalini serpent. 4:15 you start pranayama, and this is a breathing practice. This is how you control the breath, okay? And that's super important because you don't have to do yoga, the physical yoga. You could do the yoga breathing and still get the Kundalini.
Is that what we keep seeing popping up, the breath work?
Yep, breath work.
That's basically connected to yoga?
That's absolutely what it is.
Oh, interesting.
But it's not isolated to Hinduism. You find it in all cultures. You even find it in Wicca. So when they're casting their spells, they don't just say, alakazam, alakazum, or I don't know what their spells are, but they say it with intention and they say it with breath. So it has to be like intention and breathy, because there's power, there's life in the breath. And when you think of this, what did God do to animate us?
That's right.
He breathed. So what does Satan do? He perverts the breath. So then you go to a small break, then you go to yoga philosophy, and this is where you're introduced to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And so he was considered the father of modern yoga. 6 p.m. to 6:45, this is meditation, and we would have a roving cycle. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh was a famous, I should say infamous, yogi who came to the United States after being kicked out of India because his practices in meditation were inducing, demonic spirits, orgies, and things like that. He took over part of Oregon and almost succeeded in having this whole community take over a segment of a county.
Like a sex cult.
Yeah, it was a drug sex cult. I mean, there's a documentary about it. I'm not making this stuff up. You can find it. Yeah. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh. He's also known as Osho. So the reason it says bring your flashlight is because you're walking home in the dark, and so you're in this is a lifestyle. Then on Saturdays, God's holy Sabbath, I would be waking up at 6:15, going to do karma yoga again, sweeping, and then
Shiva hall.
which they make you work.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, they make you work on the day that the Lord says rest.
Interesting.
And then you're ready again to do your asana. And so you do asana from 6:30 to 8:35. Again, that's the physical form of yoga. And then the rest of the day you spend studying. Sunday is what they call holiday, but you really don't have a day off, because if you take holiday, you'll be backlogged and you won't be ready.
It's the day of the sun.
I was about to say, I find it really interesting that because sun worship is huge in yoga, right?
Yeah, we're going to
get
into
toward
that.
the sun. And so if you look in history, you can find this, that back in the day, after the Jews, and Gentiles came together and became Christians, the Sabbath was still kept, according to the Ten Commandments.
Even in Africa.
Right, exactly. And so then eventually it was the Roman power in collaboration with the Roman Catholic Church that started introducing Sunday. Sunday was more popular. Sabbath wasn't as popular, and boom, things shifted to Sunday.
Constantine he was Christian, he was converted, but he still was sympathetic toward the people who worship the pagans. The pagans
so
worship
the sun.
Yeah.
So he just did it to
appease
both parties and convert the pagans, so to speak. And so it's interesting that we have that history of the sun and Sunday, And you see it here again, that Sunday is the day that is kept even in yoga.
Even-
The
Yep.
one day you get
Yeah.
off.
And they make you work. Like there's no
Yeah.
other work any other day. except
Right.
for, Like,
Work
Right.
6
The one
days, but
day.
on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was our rigorous schedule every day. And this is basically how I can introduce you to what was actually happening in the background of my study, which was that I was opening portals. So this is a photo of me walking through these doors. You would have to walk through this path in order to get to one of the places that we would study. And so this colorful myriad is kind of like, if you could visualize the path to enlightenment. There's all these colorful things. There's all these distractions, but somewhere in the end, you're going to get enlightened. Don't worry. Just keep going. Just keep going, right?
All the chakras.
Yes.
Like imagery.
Yes. And nothing is, by chance, everything is very, very specific, intentional. And then this is one of their Ayurvedic spas that you could go to. And so you could get these treatments. And so people go to India to this particular part because Ayurveda, the pseudoscience part, is at top-notch level here. It was invented here. So these centers are there for people who maybe aren't coming for yoga, but they're coming for relaxation.
So does that like the cupping and all that kind of stuff is all
So
looped into that?
It's
The
the
what's
panchakarma.
pin one?
That's acupuncture. That's
Acupuncture.
Chinese
Oh, that's
traditional.
Chinese. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
But this is more like for panchakarma, the 5 different types of cleansings, and in the Yoga Sutras, they talk a lot, and the Garanda Samhita, they talk a lot about cleansing. There's a lot of ritual cleansing. And to them, it's really important. And so there's a lot of manipulation that goes on to the rectum. And so there are very wild, bizarre rituals for cleansing specifically that area. So things like putting a turmeric stalk up there and manipulating it.
That is so
Or
unhealthy.
getting into one of the holy rivers and sucking in the water and pushing it out, like basically doing an enema repeatedly. Wow. There's a lot of manipulation to that zone of the body because they consider it one of the gateways to Shakti. Wow. So remember, the dormant snake is down there because a lot of the rituals in the pagan religions dating all the way back to Egypt, there was this belief that, the rectum and was a place of access or a portal to enlightenment.
Wow.
That's so strange.
And there were a lot of homosexual orgies and things of that nature as part of the rites and the systems for like Baal worship.
Aleister Crowley, when he would do satanic ritualistic magic, and when he was writing sex, blood, magic, he found that he would go through these lengthy things to get people rituals to get the demons in, and then if he actually just brought into this circle some other male and did some homosexual act, it was like cutting a shortcut rather than doing all those things to the demonic world.
Right. It's a direct source instead of just doing the other things. Yeah.
Wow.
And that's why he participated in that. He was a very upfront bisexual because he said that gave him power.
So interesting that God specifically says, like, there's not a lot God says about sex in the Bible. He says, don't do bestiality, don't do homosexuality, and don't do it from the behind. And so it's like God, they have this counterfeit religion
For
where,
everything.
you can find enlightenment here, but then we're going against everything the Bible says.
Right. And that is true. And the other thing is that people like to focus on it being man and man. But when God says don't do sodomy, that means don't do that to a woman either.
Right.
Right.
I agree.
It is an exit
So
only.
it's not just male on male. It's it's that act.
Yeah.
Period.
We have a podcast called the Little Light Studios podcast, and in season 1, I talked to a married couple. He is a physician and she is a therapist, and I asked them any question under the sun about what the Bible says about sex, and he's very clear from a medical perspective. It is unhealthy. It is bad for you. You should not practice this. Even if you're not a Christian, he said there's so many medical reasons why you should not be involved in
And
this.
they're pretty obvious. It's a one-way.
Yeah.
And that muscle, once it's gone, there's nothing really you can do to rejuvenate that muscle.
Oh my.
So you're looking at a life of diapers. All right, so this is some of the coursework to give you an impression of what types of yoga I had to learn. So Ashtanga is known as Raja Yoga, and that is an 8-limb path. And you can see that on the far left. There's several different series that go into it. You know, sequence A with Surya Namaskar, which is what you were talking about, the sun worship. And that would cover these first 2 pages. This one is the menstrual series. So this is supposed to alleviate pain if a woman is going through PMS, having cramps. And then there's the Pawanamuktasana series. And so I had to learn 3 different versions of this series. And this is more on the therapeutic side. And all of it has to do with breath. And this one is more focused on the joints. So it's very minute movements, but centered focus. It's something that they call drishti. It's your concentration, and it's small, subtle movements. And then that would be these 2. And then this is for my Ayurvedic Iyengar training. And this was learning how to do sequences specific for a disease. So I had a client who had psoriasis, and so I had to create my own sequence. And so you'll see that I start with Savasana. You can't really see it completely here, which is a corpse pose. You lie on the floor as if you were dead. There's symbology and there's reason for that, because it's the reincarnation myth. And then you go into the chanting, and then here you teach people how to breathe. And, you know, each sequence basically would take someone and supposedly cure them from having psoriasis. All right.
So question, because some of these poses, it's like that kind of a stretch is a really nice stretch. If you're like working out like crazy, it's not necessarily the pose that is necessarily the problem, right?
No, so there's a difference.
Context.
There's, you know, the body is made to move. The body does need stretching. The body does need exercise. It is fine to stretch. A lot of these poses are similar to the ones that you would find in gymnastics or ballet or just your general gym fitness class, you know. But the problem is that when they are put in this particular sequence, and under the construct of yoga, it is a nonverbal language to the spirit realm, and it is a devotion to the whole pantheon of their gods and their deities.
So what if somebody says, what if I just do something out of sequence, just one? Like, for example, I saw the leg raises. I do leg raises for
I know, I do too.
abs,
That's why I asked.
No, I mean, this is literally, there's a breath, there's a prayer, there's a chant.
There's a method with it that comes with it. It's not necessarily that I just bent over and touched my toes.
No, like you're not going to get possessed just doing regular stretching.
So what if you know, I just want to ask the right questions for someone who might be watching. What if somebody says, well, I'm going to do this particular pose. I'm into yoga, but I'm not doing all the chanting and everything like you just said. I just want to do it for the sake of the stretching.
Yeah. So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that because, again, there's a difference between the stretches that you would do for normal physical, you know, relief from tight muscles, and then there's this prescription, and this is a worship and a prescription. So these are some of the textbooks that we were trained in. Asana, again, is the physical practice. Mudra is when they do everything with their hands. So there's these hand signals, right? That's mudra. All of this is sign language to the spirit realm. And then yogic management of common diseases. This tells you, you know, they believe that we're not created by God of creation from dirt. We're created from cosmos, and the cosmological being has put certain things in us because of our ancestors. And it's just complex and convoluted and confusing. But basically you have 3, what they call doshas, 3 heat, you know, because they believe in elements. So like water, earth, you know.
Same as in witchcraft.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's that is describing that. Then mudras, this is specifically, you know, yoga for the hands. And then this is the guy that I was talking about, that Osho, who took over a county in Oregon. And so he collected, what he did is he went through all the religions and all the continents in the world, and he sought out what do other religions do in order to transcend and go into the spirit realm. And so he collected over 268 meditations. And so this book was given to us for us to, take in and teach to our students. The Yoga Sutras, that would be Patanjali, the father of modern yoga. And then this is more about drishti. This is about your state of mind. These are the mantras that we were taught. And so for people who don't understand, mantras are incantations to the spirits. And there are requests. They are first homage to Brahman, the ultimate deity in their world, in their religion. But a mantra is saying, I want to yoke my spirit with you, Atman, Brahman, and any other deity that I, subscribe to, that I want to worship. And so when you read this, like the first one, Om Sarvasham Sabastir Babatu, when you read this, it sounds peaceful the way they've translated it. Let there be health, let there be peace, let there be wholeness, let there be celebration. But you don't understand what celebration is in the dark realm versus what God intended our
And
celebration
look how
to be.
subtle and deceptive it is. Let there be. Who
Yes.
said that?
Let there be
God
light.
in
Right.
Genesis. Yeah, so you could read this as a Christian and be like, oh, this is just like, quoting the Bible.
Right.
Okay, so I have a theory on
Yes.
this. When God created Lucifer, he created him to be the one that really told the rest of the people about who God was, right?
was the
In
light
fact,
bearer.
That was his job, right? He was
Yeah.
the light bearer. And so God and his purposes would bring Jesus into his council, and Satan's upset that he can't go into the council with God and everything, right? And then that whatever they were planning to do, they told Lucifer. Lucifer then would have told the other angels would have went out to the creation and told everybody else, right? So Lucifer is designed to tell you something about God. He cannot operate outside of the way that God designed him. All he did was bent it.
Yeah.
So he's still operating like God intended him to build.
Yeah.
He's just bent.
He's just twisted.
He's just twisted.
It's a
Look
different
what it even
narrative.
says. Lead me
Yep.
from the... Are
False.
you going to read that?
Yeah. Lead me from the false to the truth, from darkness to light, from death to deathlessness. So that's that whole theory of reincarnation, right?
But that's literally like the story of the gospel.
Yep.
Like, lead me from false to truth, darkness to light,
It's
from death to
it's
eternal life.
almost like the prayer that when they asked Jesus, how do we pray, right?
Yeah.
Let your will be done.
Yes.
Peace
Yes.
on earth and,
Same
Yeah.
thing. So these mantras are things that literally we had to memorize, and you had to open every single class with this mantra.
Wow.
You'd have to sing this. And the reason is because you're setting the tone and you're inviting the people who you're worshiping, not the spirits, not people. You're inviting the spirits into the practice and the devotion because you're about to do a seance.
Just like starting church with worship music.
Yes,
and
exactly.
inviting the Holy Spirit to be a part
Exactly.
of your organization. Yeah.
So, like I said, 12 to 14 hours of training, meditation. This is when we're doing theory. So this is all the philosophy that's involved in yoga. This is some of the Iyengar. This is for people who are disabled maybe or elderly, and they need additional accoutrements like straps and blocks. So they teach you to even address that population. This is more of the same. So there are inversions or different postures that are said to activate different chakras. So they're teaching you the ins and outs. This is me leading class. And again, this is when they're teaching you. This is more like student-led, and this is
This is all in
teacher-led.
India?
This is all India.
Wow. And all these people are not from India.
Nope. Well, two
they're
people
from all
were.
over.
Two people in my group were from India, but everyone else was from
All different
everywhere.
parts. Wow. Yeah.
So again, these are my certifications, so you know that I'm not, just pretending to say that I did things. So that's my core power yoga certification. That's more of an Ashtanga style. This is the School of Yoga and Meditation, and this is holistic yoga teacher training with an Ayurvedic approach, and this one is yoga therapy teacher training. And so I was so into this. These are my kids. And again, they're naturally flexible too. Like, I've never met anyone who can put their knees together and
Go that direction.
And go that direction. My kids were naturally flexible. And so for them, it was easy. And they would see me practicing and getting ready for my class, because you create your own sequences and they would imitate me. And so here I am indoctrinating my
Training up
children.
your children.
Right. So this is just to show you how devoted I was. And again, I was teaching at the best clubs. This is like part of the sun salutation series, and I included this because here you are slithering like a snake on the floor,
bowing down
to the sun salutations.
Exactly. And you're getting ready. This is a transitional pose, but you're getting ready to come up into the cobra pose.
Wow.
So the serpent pose.
You're a snake.
So my life was yoga. From medical practices to teaching, I was sold out. And in the far left, you can see me doing an Ayurvedic treatment. This is part of the Panchakarma. You can see me holding my hands in the mudras. On the bottom, that's actually my mom, and she was getting a basti. And basti is where they put a medical oil on your knees to quote unquote rejuvenate it. Here I'm doing corrections on a student. Here, this is, you know, yoga cooking classes, or yoga classes and cooking classes. This is me really studying. And this was required every Friday night. We would go to the beach and meditate at sunset. Wow. And I had no idea that it was sun worship.
Well, I noticed
I had no idea.
Picture right there on
You
your
were just
shirt.
like,
There's a picture
yeah,
of
that's
a
one of the
god.
deities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're wearing the god on your shirt.
Everybody loves sunsets. We're just out there enjoying
Yeah,
it.
And
I just,
you're not just super naive. Like
Yeah.
as a Christian, I had a collection of statues. I loved religious art, even from when I was agnostic. I had candles of Jesus and all this. And when I became a Christian, I still had that because it was beautiful art to me. I love religious art. I had Buddha, I had goats, I had Jesus, and all these Catholic things and everything because I just thought it was beautiful. And somebody pointed it out, and I was like, well, I don't worship it. It's just art to me. But I'm still inviting that thing into my house. It's still a beacon or some kind of signal to the spirit world. Well, I'm allowed in. He's got the idol.
But I'm
here.
okay to not listen to what God said. I'll have no idols, you know? Yeah. So I was just completely ignorant that I was practicing spiritualism. And so again, you could see me. This one, the second one up top, is one of the structures in Hanuman temple, the monkey temple. And below, this is me at the monkey temple after the priest took me into a back room and blessed me.
With the dot on your forehead.
Oh, and put the dot
Can
and opened my
means?
third eye. So the third eye is supposed to be the seat of knowledge. But this is also the place where God says this is our seal, right?
So
this is where he puts
frontal lobe.
our frontal lobe.
Isn't the third eye on the dollar? Is that
Yes,
the triangle?
yeah.
Oh.
And
Another
like I said, this is not about the people of India. Again, I love the people. I don't see a difference between me and them just because they're Indian. You can ask any of my Indian friends. They're like, wow, you know more than I do about, India or whatever. And it's really, I don't mean to sound, like someone who's extorting the culture or anything. It has nothing to do with that. I love people, period.
That's
like
right.
I'm a big mix myself, so it doesn't bother me. This is one of the Yoga Nidra classes. This is one of the meditations, and she's using a tuning fork on my forehead to open up my third eye.
So can you explain quickly what is the third eye? Because I just
So
brought it up.
we're gonna get
are you gonna
into
get
it. We're
there?
gonna get there.
Okay. I'm
And
really
again,
curious.
Completely sold out. This was who I was.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to say I love the people. It has nothing to do with it. My point is that no one ever told me that I was participating in mysticism. I never got that option to say yes, I'm in, or no, I'm good.
Right.
And again, I see the people of India as my brothers and sisters that God created. So it has nothing to do with the people. And so how did my world come to a complete halt where I started to stop and really look at, what was I doing? God allowed COVID. And in the stillness of COVID and the extreme despair, I was living in spiritualism. I was practicing yoga. I was under the guidance of a spiritual guru. I was doing Ayurveda. I was completely in this mystical world, but still claiming Christianity. And God said no. And so when he shut down the clubs that I worked at, I literally had to stop and look at everything and dig deep, because everything that I thought was bringing me peace had led me to just severe anxiety, no sense of peace, dysregulated, deity, like I wouldn't say deities, but I would say demons in my home, apparitions, spiritual harassment, spiritual attacks, involuntary Kundalini. I ended up in the ER. One attack dropped me down, and whatever spirit was banging my head on the floor, like for what felt like 2 minutes. And I could hear my husband saying, "What's wrong? What happened?" screaming. But I could hear.
Are you actually hitting your head on the floor?
I could hear him, but I couldn't. I was taken
So was
over
it like
by the spirit.
possession?
Yeah, I was
Wow.
taken over by a spirit. And when I finally was able to talk, he says, "I'm taking you to the ER." I said, "They won't believe me."
Yeah.
My fear was, they'll probably write me off.
Yeah.
They're not going to understand what I'd
They're
been
gonna just
delving
give me some
in.
drugs.
Yeah, they'll put you in a mental health hospital.
And I cried and I cried.
wow.
And I mean, God showed me so many things and the truth. And so this is where I start to see where this oppression, this demonic oppression, and why it came.
Did you ever have any discussions with other teachers? Did they have these kind of similar experiences with
All the teachers I knew were depressed.
Wow.
So I wasn't about to start talking to them about my life.
really
And it's not a
interesting.
judgment, but all the teachers I knew, I didn't know a single happy.
Because why people get into
teacher.
this is to get centered and
Yeah.
calm and this and that.
Yeah.
And it's
Peace.
like to hear from a teacher themselves, like, yeah, this didn't bring peace.
No, I think people just become really phlegmatic, and they're just very like they're okay with the state of this deep darkness because it's karma, it's reincarnation, and if we don't cleanse ourselves and work it out in this lifetime, then we're going to be 10 times or 1,000 times worse in the next. And so you subscribe to this lie and you live in this torture and you justify it by the doctrine. It doesn't make sense.
Have you ever heard of the guy Stephen Bancars?
Yeah.
So when I'm hearing his story and your story, you guys were very prominent figures and had a voice in this community, and I just praise God that he got your attention, because think of if he never got your attention,
Right.
how many, you're an evangelist for Satan,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
How many people would have been like, well, Blessing's
Yeah.
a Christian,
Yeah.
she does it, well,
So you were
Well, and
Christian,
they were.
okay, you know?
I was raised Christian.
but you were a Christian throughout
This
the
whole
yoga
time.
Oh
practice?
yeah.
Yeah.
I was deceived.
Wow.
I didn't know that I was serving another God.
Wow.
So COVID, it was a blessing in disguise, and God allowed it, and it really brought me, he leveled me. I mean, I was not myself, and I went straight to the Bible, and thank God for my niece, because she was there. She was the only practicing Christian in our home, Seventh-day Adventist. My husband and I have different faiths. We're both Christian. Like I said, my yoga community, everything just basically was done. And he started to unveil why I was spiritually oppressed. And so here you see how I had all these idols in my life and I didn't even realize it. And he literally starts taking them all out of my life one by one. And he starts to let me see what is really behind all these things that I was practicing. And the source of truth and the authority is, for me and for the whole world, whether they know it or not, is the Bible. And it says, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the sea, or the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them. And I didn't realize that I was doing all of this. And I didn't understand why this was even a commandment, really, because I had some experiences. I did go to Catholic school for junior high and college, university, and I saw these things and it felt really uncomfortable in their churches, but I didn't really understand the complete significance of it. And this is where I think it's important that in order to identify the counterfeit, you really have to know the original doctrine. Right. And so the Bible is that. It's the authority. So the whole point of this isn't that I'm not picking on Hinduism, because this is just a small capsule of all the other pagan religions. I'm just more familiar with this one, so I can speak on this. And so I take you back to the fall of Lucifer, Isaiah 14, so we get to know, why is this even important? How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning, how you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. That's super important. Remember that. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. So you see a progression of I, and Satan declares his goal, and it's to be like God. Which God?
Yahweh.
Thank you. So the great controversy really is about, after Satan gets expelled from heaven, it's basically all out war between he and Jesus. And that is how the last 6,000 years have played out. And so I will give you an encapsulation, but before we go there, Revelation 12:9 tells us the great dragon, listen to the terminology, the names that they give him. The great dragon, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast with him. So what I found in all of my research, studying world religions, including Hinduism, is that the counterfeit gospel is basically the doctrine of deception. And there's basically 8 principles that I found that every single one of them have. And the first one, like I just showed you, is reincarnation. The second one is that you will be as God. So whether you're talking about like the Yoruba, Ifa, this is like the people who were brought from Africa through slavery and ended up here, and they were practicing. It's still a prominent religion amongst Ifa believers. They believe as well that the spirit reincarnates. They believe that they will be, like God, and that they just need to tap into these chakras. They use the same language. They need to have idol worship. They have the counterfeit God. Satan presents himself as Brahman or Oshunamare. These are just different
The universe.
the universe, the cosmos. You'll also see angel worship. You'll see nature worship, and you'll also see ancestor worship. And why that's important is because it's the glue that holds it all together. If you don't have ancestor worship in this, what ends up happening is you'll just be scared because these demons won't be able to present themselves, in a way that's comfortable in the form of your dead ancestor.
Oh, I see.
You see?
So Robert Cialdini has written some books on how to influence people. In fact, some of the top companies in the world subscribe to his 6 ways of basically the strongest tie you could ever do to influence someone is family.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he's doing.
Using that same method to influence people. It's like, you're going to trust your family. Why are spiritualism? Why is the family showing up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In your case, you want to reconnect with your dad.
And my
why
dad's
is
there.
that,
Why
is that experience so strong?
Because if there weren't that piece, then they would just scare the daylights out of you. You would have a clear understanding that this was...
somebody's lying to me.
Yeah. But if they can say, oh, well... I'm your sister that passed away in that car crash. And
they know all the details. They look
do.
like them. They sound like them. I don't know, maybe they smell like them.
They know everything because there's the Bible tells us there's monitoring spirits, right? There's these a third of the angels were cast out, and they are immortal until Jesus returns in his second appearance. But the reality is, without that, none of this would make sense to us. None of us would be comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It's true.
So the big question is, how could I have practiced yoga without really knowing that I was involved in witchcraft? And I think this spells it out. In the Garanda Samhita, it's one of the ancient texts, like the scriptures for them in the Hindu faith. The asana or position of the body is described, but which technique or method to follow while in the posture is not mentioned at all. This is because the sadhana or scripture is extremely secret. Skipping down, practice and effort is made to change the activities or process of the body and the chemicals produced inside the body. even if this is achieved by everyone who practices it, there will be those who do not understand what is happening to them. For this reason, it has been described as a secret process.
Secret process.
So it's secret.
On purpose.
On purpose, right. And take note, it's saying we're trying to change the process of the body. We're trying to change the chemicals produced inside of it.
Wow.
That's a problem, because today, if you have a chemical imbalance, what do they give you?
Right, chemicals.
Chemicals to correct that imbalance. So you really got to be concerned about this stuff. So what is yoga? And this is something they hammered in me when I was in India, and it's Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. In the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali writes, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. And it's yoga is the cessation of the modification of fluctuations of the mind. So in other words, you need to empty your mind. You need to get all of what, any kind of discernment you have, you need to clear it out so that we can put in what we want.
And isn't that exactly what God's asking for us to do? We need a new mind,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
We need a new
Heart, new
transformation.
mind,
new heart.
It's like the devil is literally looking at what God's doing and going, I'm going to do the exact same
Yes.
thing, but over
Because
here.
he wants to take the
Yes.
place of God, so he
Yeah.
wants to do the exact same thing.
And that's exactly what he declared. Search me, O God, and know my thoughts.
Yeah.
Try me and know my heart, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me on the path everlasting. That is exactly this doctrine. He's saying, I'm going to search your heart. And in fact, follow your heart. And he's going to say, empty your mind, because I am going to try you, and I'm going to lead you on this reincarnation path that's everlasting. So this is Patanjali, the father of modern yoga. He is basically like I said, the modern, they call him like the father of yoga.
Body of a snake.
He looks like
Yes.
a snake to me.
Yeah.
So he absolutely is. Now, there's a lot of mythology. People don't really, there's no birth records for him. I mean, he's just kind of like this mysterious figure. And they say that he was, existed somewhere between the 2nd and 4th century after Christ's birth. And he is the reincarnation or the incarnation of the serpent god in Hindu religion. He is half snake, half human, and the Madhavali, Patanjali, sits on his tail with 7 cobra heads. So it kind of looks like a shell on the top, but it's actually 7 cobra heads above him. And these represent omnipresence. What I really want you to pay attention to, though, are these 2 figures here.
Sun worship.
You have a star and you have a crescent moon, and that's the hallmark of pagan worship.
And where do you see that exact star? You see it as part of the Jesuits logo.
Oh, yeah.
That exact star, it came into being during the Dark Ages when these different Protestant reformers came out, and the Jesuits were called in to be almost like a secret service today.
Exactly.
To counterfeit the Protestants. They would infiltrate.
sabotage them.
Yeah, infiltrate Protestant churches and try to turn people back to
paganism.
and the Roman Catholic Church.
It's
and
true.
so obviously, like, we see a lot of and I'm not speaking against Roman Catholic people.
No.
I was baptized as a baby in a Roman Catholic church. My grandparents were Roman Catholic their entire life. My grandpa's still alive, is still a Roman Catholic. I'm just pointing out
Their hearts are pure.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many beautiful Roman Catholic Christians. I'm just pointing out like what we can actually see, and this is just his history. You can just find it.
Yep.
So
I bet you if you went back in time, I mean, this is probably the symbol of Babylon. This is the symbol
We're
of...
going
You know
there.
what I
We're
mean?
going
Okay.
there. Exactly.
So these demons have outlived everybody else, and they're just putting their stamp on different cultures.
And so when you look at this, you find out that yoga is actually religion. And if you break it down, it says Hatha Yoga. Ha means the sun, and Tha means the moon. Hatha Yoga is also known as Yoga Asana. And the primary goal is Kundalini, awakening the serpent. Now remember what he looked like.
Right.
A serpent.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is that yogic awakening. And just like you said, if we go back in time, what do we find? We find the same symbols with Ishtar, Inanna, Venus, the morning star, or it's also known as Lucifer, son of the morning, right? In the
snakes
Bible.
on her head?
So I'm not sure about what's on her head, but she is the main deity within, the Babylonian and pagan worship during biblical times. And so you find her in Mesopotamia, Samaria. You find her all over, spread through the Middle East. You find her, she's just repeated and reinvented. And so you'll find that with many of the different gods. And so you'll also see her star in that form in modern day, and you'll also see it in this form.
Yep, the hexagram.
And people aren't just going to spontaneously come up with this stuff, guys.
Yeah.
Right,
No.
right,
Yeah.
right.
There is an
coincidence.
author. There is an author.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't have this kind of thread of consistency through history
No.
and there not be some
No,
sort of
because
purpose
remember,
with
they
it.
didn't have technology the way that we have it. They didn't have internet. So I could literally start a religion and a cult right now, and I could have an adherent somewhere in Egypt,
Yep.
and they would be worshiping with me. That's not how it went down back then.
But here's the beauty of God. You can look at the Bible and you can see through these different cultures, thousands of years, different things. You see the golden thread of how God worked with all these people, and it's still the same today for us. Those truths are true back then as they are today, and the devil's just counterfeiting this.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Wow.
So again, biblical accounts, you see the sun and the moon
Yeah.
worship. You see that Baal. You see that his emblem was the sun, and then you also see Ashtoreth, the moon, and he's named many different things. These are the scriptures that relate to this account. And so, as we know in the Bible, it talks about how God is telling, Paul is telling the Israelites, those who are basically, becoming pagan and such. He says, you're rejoicing in these idols. You're creating these cakes for your goddess, and so these are all the rebukes that give the depiction of what was happening in biblical times. So yoga is ancient mysticism and nature worship. So you see basically that what Kundalini actually represents is the sun and the moon coming together. And so they believe the sun is in the base, right?
At the crotch?
In the crotch, basically,
Okay.
at the coccyx bone, in the genitals, basically. And that there's a channel that runs up the middle of the body, and that these snakes need to connect, intertwine, and once they meet at the top, you have this enlightening or this awakening. And so it's symbological, but it's also what they're practicing in the spirit, literally and theoretically.
So what are those chakras, those little circles that you see
So
going
those
up?
are supposedly energy channels. So as the snake, the Kundalini serpent, rises up the spine, it hits every one of these circular zones. And when it hits that zone, you're gonna hear a certain tone, and you're gonna feel a different jolt.
I find it kind of creepy when you say
Yeah.
that you hear a different tone, as if
You
like
do.
the
You hear
spirits are
music.
speaking. Oh, it's
No, you
music.
hear
I was
music.
thinking like maybe like the spirits are speaking to you.
So when I had my Kundalini experience, and I didn't understand that was being worked on me with my guru, we did these undulations and these, breath work, this pranayama, and I felt it immediately in my genitals, this overpowering sensation that feels orgasmic, but it's cosmic. Like it goes beyond, it feels like it's going beyond you. And then as it climbs up and hits different points, it literally makes a different sound.
But no one was touching you.
Nobody's touching me.
That is scary.
And then it hits your head, and then you're transported to this for me, it was a completely black place. And it was quiet, and it was peaceful, but it was oddly pitch black.
Oddly dark.
Oddly
and
pitch
that's
black.
interesting because it starts with the sun and it goes to the moon, like
Yeah.
to light to dark.
Yes. And so they,
Interesting.
exactly, you're very
There's a
perceptive.
lesser
Light to dark
that's-
instead of
And
dark.
so
Wow.
the practice is also to invert. So you see that he's literally turning the gospel upside down.
Wow.
You'll see that.
Instead of being enlightened.
Yeah.
Wow.
So here's Surya Namaskara. So a lot of people think that the first a series that they do is just a warm up in a yoga class, but it's actually called Surya Namaskara. It's been translating into English as sun salutation because it sounds a lot more friendly than the direct Sanskrit translation to English would be sun worship.
wow.
And so Surya on the far end, that is the solar deity in the Hindu faith. And then these are all the ways that you praise and worship that deity. And this is Shiva, Lord of Yoga and Lord of Dance. You can see that the serpents are worshiping the disc in Egypt. Isn't that interesting? The Urus, that's what that snake is called. Those are cobras. And then you can see that yoga was also practiced in Egypt.
Oh, wow.
And Shiva has a moon next to his head. There's the snake. There is the trident, like this is what because it was so fascinating when I edited that episode with Raj, who pointed all this out, that there's so many similarities of Shiva with Satan, and these are just some of them.
Oh, we're going to get into it.
So, from whom did yoga originate? Lord Shiva, among the great deities of Hinduism, most personifies the practice of yoga. You will see the picture of him from at a temple where he is seated under tree of knowledge. And Shiva is the god of knowledge, and so he is crushing the male child. There is a ring a bell male child, and as you can see, there's always a serpent with him, and then there's always a trident, a pitchfork, a trident, as you can say. And then his feet, as you can see, are bovine feet. Bovine. Cow.
Oh, okay. So, like cow, is that what it? Cow?
Yeah.
Like Baal or something?
Yeah. And most of those temples of Dakshinamurti form of Shiva, they are built facing the south because he's a south-facing creature. In other words, the devotees have to face the sides of the north.
I will within the sides of the north above the clouds be like the Most High.
So when a person is practicing yoga, they are linking their mind with Shiva's mind.
So that came from the Book of the Dead.
Yep, Book of the Dead.
Wow.
And so the Tibetans also have a Book of the Dead.
Wow.
And the Bible has the Book of the Living.
Exactly.
The life, Why serve a God of
Yeah.
the dead when you're, God is
So
living?
that's what you're following. You're following a practice of death. The whole goal is to get you to kill yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why these
And to
people are
accept that
depressed.
the darkness is okay.
a death and
It's a
rebirth.
death
Just
and a rebirth,
passing
'cause you're
from one
only gonna
life to another.
reincarnate,
Why
yeah.
wouldn't you want to die,
So as you were just speaking, we're going into the moon's symbology that you see in the actual Shiva. And so Chandra is the name of the moon. It's the moon deity. And you could see it on top of Shiva's head. That woman that's head is popping out of his, if you notice, she's actually a serpent. So that's him in a state of Kundalini.
Oh, wow.
And if you notice his face, he's kind of smiling.
And his eyes are closed.
Yeah, and you can see that he has a crescent moon at right between his eyebrows. He also has the Chandra right up on his head. And then he has the snake on his side called the Suki Naga. And he's the serpent god. And he's supposedly someone who, in the Hindu mythology, this deity was very devoted to Shiva and didn't allow him to get poisoned. There's a lot of convoluted mythology. But anyway, so the snake stays with him.
But it's like the snake is on the brain.
Yes.
The snake is on,
Yes.
coming out. The snake is like literally behind him.
Yep.
The force behind him.
Yep. Wow. And so this in yoga is Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose, and it venerates the moon. So you cannot separate yoga, the physical practice, from the worship, because this is the form of that.
Yep.
This is the form of that deity. You cannot separate it. You're channeling, you're talking to that deity. You're saying, oh, warrior, lord, whatever that deity is, I am paying respect to you. I am your devotee. There's no way around it. And then this is another version of Chandra. And he's riding, or she's riding in her chariot.
Which in our culture became Santa Claus with the reindeer. Maybe, I don't know.
It could be because you do see this. You see this deity in almost all the religions in the in the East, and also in Greek mythology. You see, I don't remember the name, but you can find this.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed
This
Reindeer.
feels
Right.
a bit like the red pill, blue pill. It's
We're
like
waking up.
if you,
Yeah.
it's like if you take the pill, you have to take this action, and by taking that
Yeah.
action, if you remember that scene from
Yep.
The Matrix, what it says is, "What does this do?" And he says it disrupts the input-output signal, so that we can pinpoint you and then find you. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's what this stuff is doing.
It is.
The action is allowing the demonic world to pinpoint you.
And come
you're
right to
making
you.
that choice.
Yes.
And then they're able to come in.
Exactly. So these are some more postures that are really sought after postures, because they're pretty. Let's just be real. They're pretty to look at.
Yeah.
But when you actually know what Akapada Rajapatasana, mermaid variation of king pigeon is, you'll see that it's a Hindu god. It's a pigeon.
Right.
And it's basically worshiping the goddess of lust and passion.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's by chance that our world is obsessed with yoga pants at this point.
No.
Right?
No.
I mean, there's a reason why that those kind of clothes are worn during that kind of an activity. Is it really does bolster up the idea of lust.
It
right?
is. Ekapada Rajakapotasana is hence an activation of the Manipura chakra. And so all of this has to do with like awakening a certain spirit. And the Kundalini spirit is a sensual, cosmic force, that increases supposedly fertility and sexual arousal and enlightenment. Wow.
Who
Right?
would want all that?
And then you have Lord of the Dance pose. There are different variations. This one I'm basically doing somewhat of a bind. I'm taking my foot and putting it in the bend of my elbow, but oftentimes you'll see it where someone's grabbing their foot with both hands behind their head, and it venerates again Lord Shiva, the Lord of the Dance, the Lord of Yoga.
Satan.
And so, you move on to Anjali Mudra. A lot of people, even we do this as Christians, we'll often go,
Yeah.
oh, thank you. And, we don't realize.
Send little praying hands.
Yes, praying. We don't realize that this is it's a mudra. It's another way of
You never seen the
talking
Bible
to the
about put
spirits.
your hands together and
Well,
pray?
No.
Yeah, I've never really thought of the emoji like that before. Why isn't it like this? Because isn't that
So they
kinda how
do
you
have
would
another
pray?
one like this.
Oh,
Have you
interesting.
seen that?
But that may be honoring whatever faith does that kind of a thing,
Yeah,
like Muslims
right.
or whatever. But yeah.
So you'll see that none of this stuff is by accident. These are symbolic gestures, and they facilitate the flow of energy. And that energy is spirit. It's not like taking a Red Bull and all of a sudden you've got
Right.
more energy. We're not talking about that. When you hear energy, think spirit.
Yeah.
Half bound lotus pose, tree pose, venerates the tree, and the goddess Parvati, the wife of Shiva. And she's the embodiment of Shakti. So you'll notice that these deities have more than one name, and they have different reincarnations and different avatars, so that's something that you have to pay attention to. Wheel is supposed to be this pose that basically it opens up all the chakras. And so it's something that you do toward the end of your practice. And so usually if you're about to have a situation, it could come there at the peak when you've, opened up yourself. Because if you think of an animal in nature, not that we're that at all.
Yeah, you don't expose your belly.
You don't. And here you are completely belly up
Exposed.
exposed. Yeah.
In a very vulnerable state.
Yeah.
And that's the one that you saw in the Book of the Dead that the Egyptians were doing.
Oh.
Yep.
Good
Yeah.
point.
And they'll even drop down to their elbows or they'll grab their ankles in that position. And you see it in like gymnastics as well, but gymnastics isn't this stuff.
It's the same as like I do leg races for my abs. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not at all. So yeah, again, anything that you see in yoga, it venerates either a deity, an element of nature that they draw power on that has spirits in it, or it venerates a past guru. So you're also praying to dead people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which, according to the Bible, is
Necromancy.
necromancy and
For
forbidden.
instance, this one, Kundinyasana, this flying split, both feet are elevated and you're balancing on one elbow. And it is venerating sage Kundinyasana. So he was one of the first 5 monks, and he was Siddhartha. He was a disciple of Siddhartha Gautama, who is Buddha. And a lot of people don't know that Buddha was an actual person who lived and died and was buried. He didn't become an ascended or a divinity until 500 years after Christianity.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, they changed the doctrine because they saw that people, the Bible did reach Asia, And so they saw people being swayed by the word, and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
We need to counterfeit.
We need to counterfeit. Yeah.
Whoa.
So headstand, this is like the goal in yoga. Like everybody's like, whoa, I really want to do a handstand or a headstand. And while we're thinking about it transactionally, like in terms of I'm going to be able to get more likes, or I'm going to be that cool person in class, what you don't realize is that you've just turned the gospel upside down. Like what you were talking about, the moon and the sun.
So much of what you're saying is like making my mind go over. You know, the Bible tells you to stand up. Who can stand in this day? Like to stand in that space with God is very difficult. And what they're doing is just
and you're working so hard at these feats, right? And you're practicing and you're swallowing and ingesting this foolishness, that's just demonic in nature, just to be able to do these things, not realizing you're communicating with spirits. This is not good. So tying it back in, you know, the sun and moon, transcendental meditation. So what we just saw with the headstand or the arm or hand stands is that this is a posture where you will become still and be aware of the breath. This is where yantra of apastawa, the water element, you visualize the bright, pure, refreshing taste, feel your own connection. Like there's just a lot of language that's basically telling you, think of the moon, and we know that the moon does have an effect on tides in the ocean. And so they're basically telling you, and visualize that and realize that there's energy and power in this, right? And bring it into the center of your awareness. Flip the world upside down, make the moon prominent, and bring the sun down, which is cockamamie. I mean, why would you do that? But here you see again, this is in Egypt, sun worship. And you also see the cow, right? The bovine. You see Ishtar or Ashtoreth, Inanna. You also see this symbol in Roman coins. You also see it on the cap of the Catholic priests. They wear it as well. And you also see it in the Lima, the more Western occult, Aleister Crowley. Yeah.
You got the Ouroboros.
Yep.
And
you can see the swastika too.
And
the Hindu
little
symbol.
Hindu symbol at the top.
Which is Brahmin,
Hitler was super into this kind of stuff.
He was.
This is where he got it from.
This is exactly where,
I think why God told us in the second commandment not to have graven images, right? And it's because he could see through time that this is going to get used. And whether God said it and don't do this, and the devil knows that it's wrong, and so now he's using it, but this is his form of communication. This is his way of stamping, going, this is mine.
Yeah. And the thing to also understand is that Sanskrit is a spiritual language. It was invented specifically for this purpose. And again, they keep telling you about how secret it is, right? It's a secret. It's a secret. So yoga is religion and a homage to the Hindu deities. Yoga is a moving liturgy or moving meditation that pays reverence to over 330 million deities.
That's crazy.
Okay. And that's just the conservative figure that they give out, that everyone agrees on. And, when you think about what you're doing, you really have to pay attention. In yoga, it's not just about the physical posture. Again, it's about the breath. It's about the finger poses. It's about the way that you set your intention or your mind. And even there's an internal focus that they want you to be aware of to still your mind and quiet it. And then there's an exterior point of focus. So there's this just complete blackout that you have to be in the state of like mummification. And the promise is you'll get God consciousness. And so these are some of the deities within the Hindu pantheon. Again, I cannot put 330 million of them on here. But what I can't understand for the life of me is why anyone would worship someone who is as murderous, say, as Kali is here.
They just look evil,
right?
Stepping on somebody and killing them, and smiling and laughing with horns. I mean, it's like if you just kind of observe.
And animals, they believe that animals, are sacred, and it's like I have a puppy and I love her dearly, but I would never bow to her. I would never create a temple for her. I can see that she's a lower being.
That's a worship of the creation.
Yeah. So there's a focus on worshiping the created instead of the creator.
I want you to pay attention to that hat too.
Yeah.
And
Which-
have you ever seen
Which one?
down here?
This
have you-
one?
Yeah. Have you ever seen a pope wear a hat
Yeah.
similar
Yeah.
to that? It's a Dagon
Yeah.
fish head.
Interesting.
And you just notice that they're just disfigured, you know, completely disfigured people, either half male, half female, you know, hermaphrodite or transgender. They'll be half animal. They'll have extra arms. It's just wild.
They're all kind of always holding something too as like a distraction tool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
They're-
here, pay attention to this and this and this and this and this.
Even here, you see the, you know,
The
the
hexagram.
star,
Yeah.
the hexagram. Yeah. So it's all messages telling you, look, this is dark stuff. This is not, you know,
Bambi?
where do you
Bambi's
see Bambi?
evil?
Yeah.
There's that reindeer again.
That's the moon goddess that we
There's
were just
that
talking
reindeer.
about, Chandra. So what is Hinduism? Yoga is Hinduism. Yoga is an arm of Hinduism. It is religion. So when we talk about Hinduism, we have to understand that it's a religion with over 330 million gods. It's also the world's third largest religion.
Wow.
And when you put that in numbers, that's 1.2 billion followers. That's a lot of
There's a
people.
lot of people.
Hinduism is a manifold system of thought marked by a range of philosophies. Notice that the Bible tells us that we are to beware of philosophy,
philosophy.
right?
Wow. Yep.
That we shouldn't be just listening to conjectures and
Right.
hanging our faith on that.
Yeah.
Right.
It has rituals, cosmological systems, astrology, divination, pilgrimage sites, theology, metaphysics, mythology, Vedic rites, yoga, mudra, agamic, which is tantra rituals. That's the sexual realm of yoga. Transcendental meditation, possession, animal and human sacrifice,
Wow.
and idol worship. I'm not saying everybody that is a Hindu does human sacrifice, but there are sects that do believe in that, and some sects will sect SECTS, not SEX.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sections.
Yes,
of
sections
the-
will sacrifice somebody to get what they need. So one thing that I really appreciate about Pandit, Pseudo Pandit, is that he has a great program on, is it Amazing Discoveries? And he talks about why, even though he's from India, why he chose Christianity and how he, you know, was an inquiring mind. And he held this up as one of the ways to see if this is something you should hang your faith on. And so he says, it's not him, he's quoting someone else. He says, one must listen to the claims of the document under analysis and not just assume fraud or error unless the author disqualifies himself by contradiction or known factual inaccuracies.
Yeah.
This religion is riddled with known factual inaccuracies and contradictions. So here we see that the doctrine includes henotheism, which is one God out of many. So you can pick the God that you want, right? Polytheism, you can worship all the gods, you know, that are available. Pantheism, which is God is in all things. So everything is sacred,
Everything is God.
right? That apple that you're about to eat, that cow that's in your farm, you know, everything.
That's so strange because would I be eating God?
Yes, because then you
It's
are God.
contradiction.
Yes, it's like, it
Contradiction.
doesn't make any sense.
And then there's pantheism, which is God is the universe. So that's that whole cosmic and universe language that you hear. It also includes agnosticism. So people who claim they don't have faith, but they can still be a part of this faith system. It includes atheism. So yoga is atheistic in nature, right? They don't really believe in God. They believe they are God. So it's different.
Right.
There's monotheism, worship of one deity, right? And I don't see how one doctrine can have all of these different things unless you're casting a broad net and you're trying to catch everybody. So in other words, it's basically relativism, you know?
Universalism too.
Whatever's God to you is God to you. Who am I to say? Right.
And the God in me salutes the God in you.
Right.
That's what they
The
say.
namaste,
Namaste.
exactly. So it's contradictory, full of known factual inaccuracies. So who is the supreme being in Hinduism? And you've heard me refer to him already, Brahman. And they call him the ultimate reality. They say that he's the cosmos, the universe. But he also comes with other deities, but the top 3 deities are the ones that you hear about the most because it's a way to convert Christians. And so they talk about, let's see, there's the top 3 are Brahma, the sustainer Vishnu, creator Brahman, the sustainer Vishnu, and the destroyer Shiva.
So that's just like a counterfeit trinity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they don't believe in a trinity. That's just the 3 that you hear. That is the most. There's like 5 at the very top from what I've studied, and but yet each one of them is an incarnation of itself, if that makes sense. So it's really Satan, and then Satan's like, but then
his little minions that want to be just like him, or
but
whatever,
no, he's just like, but there's also this side of me.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm going to call him Vishnu. And then there's this side of me, and I'm going to call her Shakti. And it's this, and it's this. And so it's kind of like, I'm going to cover all my bases because as many people as there are on earth, one of these have got to hit.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe that's why he identifies as androgenic, It's
Yeah.
like, whatever.
Well, it's
side
perverting what God said, right?
Right.
Marriage is between a man and a woman. So he's attacking that. So we come to what is Hatha Yoga, and basically it uses the physical body, the Annamaya Kosha, to influence and gain control over the mind. That's the whole intent. It has nothing to do with you being physically fit. And these are the different limbs that they use. And again, you ask, can you separate it? Clearly, no. The yoga Pradipika, tells us that the goal of all yoga practice is to awaken Kundalini Shakti. So when you're doing yoga, it's very narrow-minded. The goal is to experience this awakening.
So, and then the awakening is what? Because I think I heard from Eric Wilson, whom we did a documentary with The Dragon Revealed, and he was a former karate and martial arts instructors. He said that meant possession.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It
Being
is.
possessed.
So what they call samadhi, or they call moksha, it's like you're being liberated from your mind and you're being united with the ultimate reality, which is Brahman. So in other words, you're being possessed.
Yeah.
And then here we are, New York Times bestseller. Sadhguru says Kundalini is mind altering. And, he says that it's able to change the perceptions and change the chemicals in your brain as your eye is awakened.
Which is interesting because in Revelation it talks about the dragon will deceive the whole world through sorcery or pharmakia, and that's what pharmakia is mind altering.
Yep.
And we see how fast yoga is growing.
Yep.
And how it's really taking over the world, and it's deceiving a lot of people. Even Christians are getting involved.
Yeah. So there is a link for anyone who's interested to see what Kundalini looks like. I'm not going to click on it here. But it's very, it looks like demonic possession, like what you would think, like The Exorcist.
And you see it in a lot of churches, charismatic churches.
Yep.
You'll see the same thing.
The same
what
thing.
was the name of that documentary that put the Kundalini next to the people in the
Oh
church?
The
yeah,
Holy
we
Spirit.
actually
I see. Yeah, when you
we have
see
a video
it,
on it.
like Pentecostal.
Oh, that was a
Yeah.
name for it. It wasn't like Kundalini Waking. It was like Yoga Uncoiled or something like that.
Yeah.
Or-
Oh, I don't know, but we have a video on it. Look up the law of
Yeah.
attraction or tongues in the church.
We'll put
We
a
talk
link
about
at
that.
the top.
Right
Yeah,
here.
yeah. But in this particular video, you see the guy who is basically he's a sorcerer, and he's manipulating this woman with his fingers, and he's controlling the serpent, and she's undulating. Her eyes are rolled back. So you'll see that version. You'll also see the version where it's erotic. You'll see them looking like they're performing an act
Whoa.
of
And that's
sex.
yoga. Wow.
Yeah. And so why does he say it's dangerous? He says Kundalini yoga in its essence is the most dangerous form of yoga. When things go wrong, they go seriously wrong in ways that you can't fix it.
And this
Right,
is
you
someone
open the
who
door
teaches it, practices it, promotes it, right? This is not
he's
like a Christian.
This guy is one of the biggest gurus right now out there.
I think that there are certain demonic entities that get invoked, and they are literally crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember Roger Monroe talking about there are certain classes of demons that when they were told they could not return back to heaven, they went crazy.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are like, what?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you invite that, blah,
in you,
there's no getting them out. I mean, it's like
because being encapsulated in your body is like heaven for them.
Yep.
You know, you have to think about that, you know, because it's vengeance toward God, and it's also, wow, I get to, you know, do something.
Take someone out.
You see this in the Bible where there was this man who was possessed, and it was only through Jesus' power. He was there and said, go and leave this man. And the demons entered a group of swine, and they fell off the rocks.
Yep.
And so I can see that being dangerous. And it's only Jesus and through his strength that you can be set free from that possession.
So he also points out that there's two types of yoga. He would never give yoga, the Kundalini yoga, to a person who is like raising a family. So all those moms at home that are, you know, taking time out to do yoga, you're really putting your family at risk. He says, we teach people who live in family situations a different yoga. There is a certain other type of yoga we teach to ascetics, which, by the way, none of us are. Like, none of us are living in some desert, you know, completely abstemious of everything and devoid of bathing. And, you know, that's none of us. So we don't fit in either category. So here's a case study, a case report of a 19-year-old. It's okay, but she basically shows up in the hospital, and she has signs of awakening of the Kundalini, and it manifests itself through her physical and psychologically. And some of the things that she reports is that she's feeling this vital energy in her body, you know, and that it's coming from an outside force, and she just feels like she's the recipient. And so she describes it as feeling vibrations of prana in different parts inside the body, feeling electric-like currents flowing up and down the nerves, experiencing bliss, having divine visions, and getting inspiration and insight. She's 19 years old. She found yoga on her own and got intrigued because of books and stuff that she saw online, so she started doing it. And then before long, she was having a Kundalini experience. And so the Bible tells us, let no one disqualify you, insisting on asceticism, going on in detail about visions, puffed up without reason by his sensuous mind. And that's exactly what yoga is. It's all about the mind. And it is about, you know, perceptual experiences that fool you and think that you're one with God, or you have become God.
And puffed up without reason. That's what you're talking about. Like when you're doing this stuff, these people are still depressed. Yet they're like, I got my yoga mat, I'm enlightened, and all these things. They have a pride that comes with it, but for what? Without reason. They still have no hope. They still have no peace. They're still depressed.
Nope. And it's important to realize that all of these gurus who are quote unquote ascended masters, I'm not going to say 1,000% is this is true. Well, I can say 1,000% they all died, but I can also tell you that most of them are extremely perverted, especially the ones that have introduced yoga to this world. They have class action suits against them for child rape, molestation, sexual harassment, you name it. They're just uncontrolled with their need for material things. Like the guy Bikram had like, I don't know, 20 to 40 Rolls Royces, something like that.
It's so weird. Like they get away with it because when somebody goes off to India or whatever, and this guru, he's touching all over them, they're like, well, just trust him. You know, he's like the guru.
Right.
He's the guy,
Right.
you know?
Well, even Sadhguru, he has women who have come forward, but for some reason he's still out there, very prominent. Yeah. And so back, you know, in the 1500s and late or early 1600s, Descartes wrote about visual perception and the role of the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is it's basically in the middle of our brain, and it looks like a pine cone. And that's really a symbol that you see in the occult.
Yeah.
And you also see it in the Catholic Church, right? Yeah. So they really want to affect the pineal gland to have these perceptions. And so Descartes wrote about it, and he got smashed for his idea. But then Helena what's her name?
Blavatsky.
The Aussie Blavatsky. Where is she? Here she is. She argued that the pineal gland is that which the Eastern occultists call Devaka, the divine eye or the third eye. And to this day, it's the foremost organ of spirituality in the human brain. And so she's saying, regardless of whether you think it's scientific or not, the reality is that we are getting altered states of consciousness. We are getting this, out of body experience and these gifts, because we're activating this gland. And actually, science now currently says that the pineal gland's primary function of letting in light and darkness, right? That's the main thing that it's supposed to do. It's supposed to basically allow us also to regulate our sense of time. The circadian rhythms is also what they're now calling the third eye. They say that in this one study, it says the mystical psychedelic compound found in the normal brain, not only does the pineal gland regulate the secretion of melatonin, which is a sleep-inducing hormone, studies have also revealed that the pineal gland has naturally occurring DMT. And so this is what people are calling the spirit molecule. If you've heard that, it's a way to make the brain create its own hallucinogenic formula.
So let's say DMT
And remember-
is natural and it's released at birth and death and when you dream, but they
Yes.
can't really prove that. But that's what
and
they
they
believe.
can't pinpoint how the mechanism is. But remember, it said in the yoga, the ancient doctrine, it said we want to change what in the body? The function of the mind and the chemicals in the body. So they're onto something.
Oh yeah, because there's people that they tell their testimonies. When I started yoga, I started doing meditation, and then I could start going into altered states of consciousness. And then it's like, then I wouldn't even. They would take 20 minutes sometimes, and they'd say I could get to where I could instantly be in an altered state.
There was even a video of a lady who was sharing that she was abducted by aliens right after meditating.
So that was a vision.
Yeah.
Well, most of the time, in fact, I think that's what came out of the documentary that you made. Most of the time, it was because of the meditation that they saw the aliens. And there's 400 documented cases of people coming out of that illusion by using the name of Jesus.
That's right.
So that tells me that it's not this real
It's not
physical,
real.
it's this something that's going on in the brain that's probably
And,
tied to this.
Ivan Raj, whom you guys had, he also showed that one of Shiva's avatars is an alien.
Wow,
and I don't think that's a coincidence.
And that the avatars are all blue
Yeah.
and Avatar,
Yep.
and it's like throughout history you have all these blue things. The demons are messing with each culture. This is their way, Hollywood, of making it familiar to us.
So that we just accept
Normalizing.
it. So how we see in past societies, we can see that here, the Eye of Horus, right? In the front of it, you can see a snake, the cobra. And that is translated to the third eye because the serpent is what gives you that knowledge.
Right.
And so again, you see Shiva, and Chandra and Shakti and his little friend. So this is going back to that same case study. And it's just talking about, the girl's experiences and how she was feeling. And she's saying that she's hearing voices and that they're telling her to follow orders in her day-to-day activities. And so she no longer is in control of her body. She's now just completely mummified or zombified, and something else is orchestrating her life for her. She no longer eats, she no longer sleeps. She's just up doing yoga and pranayama breathing.
What?
Wow.
Yeah. So over a month, she also expressed to have experienced eternal enlightenment. And she her family members also believe these experiences to be the outcome of her yoga practices. However, the change in the patient was not seen as a deviance, but as an impact of yoga practice until she stopped eating, speaking, interacting with others, and was found frozen in sustained postures requiring medical attention. And that's when they took her to the ER.
Oh my.
So this is what people are playing with, and they don't realize it. According to Rama, Kundalini is thought to contain latent energy and memories that could be personal and transpersonal. The modern way of understanding this is saying that basically you are using the unconscious mind. And in 94, one of these prominent gurus, Sivananda, he wrote The spiritual basis for Saraswati says that some people who have awakened Kundalini get in contact with their unconscious body and see inauspicious ferocities, elements such as ghosts, monsters, etc., or get other perceptual phenomenal experiences. So that's what you were just talking
Aliens.
about. Aliens.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, we're seeing a lot of this, like people have had the experience with aliens are seeing their dead relatives and stuff. Like they'll say, I boarded a ship, an alien abducted me, I went on a ship and I saw my dead grandpa and stuff. Like it's always this connection with familiar spirits, the necromancy, communicating with the dead.
And this is that same thing, just it's been fixed for the culture and the story that he's promoting. And so this girl ends up basically, impaired judgment, absent of insight. They had to actually diagnose her with schizophrenia. Yeah. And she was catatonic subtype. She was then prescribed risperidone and lorazepam. And by the way, she never got cured.
And these are real.
These are
real
actual
things.
case studies. And that case study came from India, from a medical Indian journal. So it's not even someone who's against, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's
it's
of
their
the culture.
Man.
So let's talk about cities, because this is something people don't understand. When they're doing yoga, they're getting these quote unquote gifts, and they're called cities. They're paranormal powers. The success of Hatha Yoga depends on attaining the 18 cities. And the cities are associated with psychic or paranormal abilities. There are 8 great ones, right? And they say basically you can get anything out of thin air. It's called manifesting.
Yeah,
Don't
law
we
of
hear
attraction,
that?
Oprah, all those people.
Exactly. You can achieve clairvoyance, telepathy, clairaudience, where you hear things that aren't, there. Psychokinesis, where you can move things with your mind. So, where's my phone? And I just move it over here. You can also levitate. You can shrink your body to an atomic size. Teleportation, ability to live underwater. So that brings me back to like these people.
That sounds
who
like
do,
Marvel or
But
DC.
But think about that guy who does all those crazy magic tricks and stunts, and he's underwater.
Oh yeah,
David Blaine
Yeah.
and some of those people.
Yeah, I mean underwater for an there's how can somebody humanly do that?
No.
Chris
For how long?
Angel. And
Oh, it's like hours, if
Yeah.
not days.
Yeah.
You can't hold your breath
No,
for
you cannot.
hours.
Your body you'd be
So
devoid of oxygen.
it just makes me wonder, like, how Satan does that,
I think it's all the illusion of power and like like God, when he sends somebody into vision, right? They're like not breathing, and I mean there's supernatural phenomena that are happening there.
Legion
And-
could break chains.
Yeah,
I mean, he
and
was just
Satan's
a
like,
normal
oh
guy.
wow, that was pretty powerful, and a lot of people are going to believe it if that supernatural thing happened.
Yep.
And during this thing, so he's making these supernatural,
feel concrete.
fictitious things happening. I mean, they really, I mean, if you can, do those some of those things. I mean, that's not natural. You gotta attribute that whatever he's telling you is true to something.
Yeah,
What's
and he will
interesting-
tell you where you got it from.
Look, we can get some of this from the Bible. So, the ability to break chains and stuff. Teleportation. Satan did that to Jesus. He took him up to a mountain.
That's
took
true.
him up to a high temple and all that.
But
he can do that.
God
stuff.
also used that power for the
Philip.
yes, when he sent him to baptize the eunuch,
Ethiopian.
Candace's So we know that there is a supernatural world, but these are quote unquote gifts, which are actually curses that you're getting. And they also say that, again, and this is the girl attests to this, the case study. It attests to this. It says that you can free yourself from hunger, thirst, other bodily disturbances, hearing and seeing things far away, moving the body at the speed of the mind, assuming any form one desires, entering and controlling people and animals.
That's what makes me think of those Breatharians.
Shapeshifters, you name it. Like this is what modern movies are made out of.
Yep. And we're just getting massaged.
Yes.
Yeah. It's preparation. So this just goes over Raja, yoga. It's basically Ashtanga. It's employing the 8 limbs of Patanjali, all the things that I touched over the beginning, And the thing that happens is that yoga is very addictive, and people start to think, oh, that's the power that I have. But we have to be very clear, that's not your power. These are powers that are coming from the divine universe, and it's his power. It's Satan's power. And so when you yoke with him, he allows you to share in it, but he can
Comes
turn
at a
on
high
you.
cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. he can easily cause you a problem, and they go, "Oh, you want some healing?" Well, he'll tell his buddies, "Hey, stop
Put some
bugging
crystals on there.
Yeah.
And
So you think whatever you're doing here is actually
Yeah.
healing you, but it's just
But it's
them
not.
removing and giving you the problem.
Exactly. And this is just an example, the very first asana they tell you, Siddhasana, when you're sitting cross-legged, with your hands in Anjali Mudra, they say it opens the doors of realization. It's then the second one says the description of Savasana, that's corpse pose when you're lying like a dead person, touches the fringe of the psychological plane to be traversed in the attempt to reach the metaphysical goal. And then Bhujangasana, which is the cobra pose. I didn't have a picture of myself doing that.
He's raising it.
It's where
Arching
you're
your back.
laying on your stomach and you're arching your upper your thoracic zone. Is basically an awakening of the Kundalini. So from physiological, there is here a rise to the spiritual field. This is all witchcraft.
Yeah.
There's no other way to look at it.
And it's such a counterfeit. Like when you come to God, right? What's the first thing you want to do? When God showed up to anybody in the Bible, any example that we have, what did people do? They fell down and they
They worship.
fell on their knees, right? So sitting on the ground is like the first submission part of it. Then I'm going to die, and then I'm going to come back as your thing.
And this is what you asked about chakras. And so you can see that each one of these has an emblem on it, and each one represents a different zone or organ in the body. But these aren't the only. These are the 7 main chakras that are involved in Kundalini awakening, but there's others.
What's up with the lotus flower?
The lotus, they say that when you've reached samadhi, when you've opened up your brain and you've connected, that it's like a 1,000-petal lotus, and the lotus has a great symbology in both Buddhism and Hinduism because it grows in dirt like mud, and it comes up this beautiful flower, and so they really play on that.
But then you've achieved darkness, not light, like the moon, not the sun.
But exactly, darkness is light in this world.
Wow.
And remember, the
Everything's
scripture
flipping.
says that.
Yeah.
Right?
Whoever calls darkness light, light and darkness. Yeah.
Bittersweet.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
sweet bitter.
Isaiah.
Yeah. So again, mudras, what are they? It's sign language for the spirits. So, they're nonverbal modes of communication with deities. You're playing with, inviting the weirdest of things. These are all my hands, and I can't believe that I was able to do that first one.
How many pieces of art have you ever saw in
absolutely.
any sort of art from 16th century stuff?
Jesus, Buddha, everybody did that. The Baphomet.
always has this one and that one.
Yeah.
How many celebrities have you seen this?
Yeah.
Yep.
All the rappers and everybody else that's doing it. I mean, dude, it's like literally the same.
They're telling
hand
the
signals
spirit world,
that
they're
you
thanking
see.
the
Yeah,
spirit.
exactly.
Yep.
That's showing you and stamping who their God truly
Yeah.
is and
Yeah.
who they're connected to.
So are mudras just postures? Are they just gestures, or are they actually postures and an invocation? They are. Each finger represents a different element, and you'll see that they're into the elements, right? There's that whole nature worship. Well, the same thing happens in the occult, right? With the pentagrams and the hexagrams, and each, angle points to a different element. So when you start to make different combinations with your fingers, you're invoking those energies, which are actually spirits. So the one that you asked about, prana mudra, that you always see Jesus in Gnostic art, in Catholic works, you'll see him using that. And the reason is because prana mudra, it's said to be one of the most important mudras, because it's going to give you life and vitality and awaken things within you. And then the middle one, the one that looks like the OK finger,
the 666.
is
Right.
or the 666 is Gyan mudra, and that's the elements. When you're touching your fingers like that, you're touching space and air. And again, many people are seen doing this. Even in Hindu dance, you see a lot of this. And it supposedly awakens the crown chakra.
Which is the snake.
Exactly.
So 666 snake. Wow.
You see it.
Yes,
It's all
look at
interrelated.
they're
All the
all
connections,
interrelated.
man.
Okay, so we did a project on the elements, and really witchcraft is a counterfeit for God's miracles, right? Something supernatural happens. You got 2 options. You could either say something did that, God did it, or in the witchcraft, it's like if I just mix these right elements together, if I say the right words together, if I do the right things, I'm now in control of that supernatural thing. So it's taking the power away from God and going, now I'm the
I
one
have
that
it.
did that. And And it's weird to see all of this in history, and then bam, it's in all these cartoons, all these movies.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a whole project that broke down all these witchcraft cartoons that do this kind of stuff.
And the thing is that you notice that, if you look at the Egyptians, they were said to be, one of the most technologically advanced, most, genius societies. They believed in these same deities, and they were destroyed. So how is it that God is right? I just think of it that way,
Good point.
and you just see that same message just being transferred and repackaged over and over and over and over again. And this is exactly what that is.
It's like they've tried it with cultures throughout history,
have.
right? And they watch the culture go down, they perfect it, they tweak it, they try it again. And it's like you're seeing these same threads of things. That's why Babylon, Egypt, Greece, Rome, all those have these exact same similarities.
They do.
But I like that you brought up the fact that none of those are around, because none of those kings, like Daniel's 2 statue, are going to last.
Nope.
It's going to be God's
They're going to be
rock.
taken down. So let's put it all together. This is like then this is coming straight from the Vedic text, okay? So it's coming from them. This isn't someone else's words. This is their scripture. And it says, sitting in Siddhasana, so that's that pose, with your knees crossed. Close the 2 ears with the 2 thumbs, the eyes with the index fingers. So this is another mudra, that you're about to start doing. The nostrils with the middle fingers, the upper lip with the 4 fingers, and the lower lip with the little fingers. Draw in the prana vayu by kaki mudras, and join it with the apana vayu. Contemplating the 6 chakras in their order, let the wise one awaken, the sleeping serpent, goddess Kundalini, by repeating the mantra Hun and Hansa, and raising the Sakti, force Kundalini, with the Jiva. Place them at the 1,000-petaled lotus, the crown, being himself full of Sakti, so being himself fully possessed.
Wow.
Being joined with the great Shiva, right?
Which is the destroyer.
Which is the destroyer, the god of the Lord of dance and yoga. Let him think of the various pleasures and enjoyments. So remember, your sumptuous mind.
Yeah.
Let him contemplate on the union of Shiva, spirit, and Shakti, force or energy in this world. Being himself all bliss, let him realize that he is the Brahma. You are God.
Yeah.
So there's something really interesting with the whole sexuality, right? Nowhere in the Bible does God ever tell you to have a sexual experience outside of marriage, right?
No.
So think about this. God designs this wonderful, beautiful thing that we all share, that you are giving pleasure to someone else, right?
Yeah.
It's this ultimate act of others focusedness, right?
Yeah.
What the devil's done is just tweaked with that. He's just twisted that. No, you can do it by yourself. You can have the pleasure that you want. And look at that. You're having this pleasurable experience
By yourself.
outside of someone else or whatever, and you're like literally doing it in a demonic way
it's
with
pornography in your mind.
but with a demon doing it.
Yep.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
Dude, this
it's
is just
really
straight crazy.
and this
The
is the
serpent
thing.
goddess.
These are the things they do not show you when you're getting certified. This is stuff that I had to research because God was like, I need you to understand what you're doing is not right.
Yeah.
It will lead to damnation.
Wow.
So I'm going to speed up really quickly. It just talks about what is the concept of sin in the Hindu culture, in the religion. And it basically, they only say there's 7 of them. And they say that, we fight against them, but the more that you fight against them, the more you're going to have this dharma and this karma. And so the first one is lust, which I find interesting because the whole
Wow.
Kundalini thing is lust. So what are we, it's again, contradictory. Then they say it's anger. You should never be angry.
Well, look at some
but
of the
all their
faces of
gods
those
are
gods.
angry.
Yes.
Right.
They say greed. You shouldn't be greedy.
Law of
They're all
attraction,
greedy.
Manifest. right?
Manifest law, but you're on it.
Yeah.
And then they say attachment. We shouldn't be attached to anything, but isn't doing this whole practice a
Yoking.
form of
That's what it's called.
attachment?
Yoga.
being
You're yoking.
one with everything.
Right. And then it says sense of I, so the ego, right? They always want to kill the ego. We were made in the image of God, therefore he wants us to die.
So what if this is literally everything that you're going to get if you play around with that?
It really is.
You're going to get lust. You're going to get anger. You're going to get greed. You're going to be attached to things.
Yeah.
You're going to have a sense of
Because
only
yoga
you.
is addictive.
Yeah.
And it's pride,
Yeah.
like, oh, I got
Yeah.
my yoga mat and all
Yeah.
that. You're
Exactly.
prideful.
And so they talk about how do you get rid of sin? How do you repent? Well, they say you can recite the Purusha Satkum 40 times. Bible talks about repetitious prayer, right?
Exactly.
Vain.
Repetitious prayer. It says, or you can observe Manavrata. It's a vow of silence. So they'll just not talk. You can observe Dana, which is charity, or Dana, excuse me. And also you can do it through Aradhana, which is a ceremony of adoration, or you can do it by bathing in sacred rivers like the Ganges.
Well,
and
that would
so,
be the easiest one.
you know, but God is telling us, don't worship, Paul tells us anything that you do in terms of idol worship, you're basically giving it to demons. It's
Yeah.
not of God.
I said that.
And so he urges us to make sure that we present our bodies as a living holy sacrifice. The same way that this yoga practice is to present ourselves to these other deities. God is saying, you owe me that too. And you don't have to do all this bizarre stuff. You could just read the word and walk in my
Right.
path.
Instead of being silent, just ask for your sins to be forgiven. And
Yeah.
whatever you ask will be forgiven. Look at the counterfeit that's happening.
Right.
And the Bible says there's one mediator between God and man, which is Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
You pray to Jesus, boom.
Right.
Yeah, not any of these other deities. And so these are just examples, and it turns into ancestor worship because that's one of the ways that you can get rid of sin. And so these are all the different rituals that they'll do, a homa, a fire ritual, paksha. And basically what they're doing is they're having this seance, and they're asking their past ancestors to nourish them and to bless them and protect them.
Wow.
And so there's all these rites and things that they're doing to venerate the dead. And remember, like I said, this stuff doesn't work unless there's an angle of ancestor worship. And,
Wow.
then it becomes real to them. Because you've got skin in the game. And then on the topic of the concept of sin, there is in southern India the Yalama cult, and it's basically a cult of divine prostitution.
Whoa.
So in Hinduism, every path is a path to enlightenment. Like, if you want to be a prostitute, go ahead and be that. I got a God for that.
But they literally say don't have lust.
Right,
Everything's
but-
contradictory.
But
But that's the lie. Is they're
That's what I
telling you,
said.
that's what
the
they're getting
doctrine
away
is-
from,
yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
literally leading you into.
And this is just there's 3 different types of these girls. And if you want, you can go to YouTube. This one's family safe. You can actually watch this, and you can see that I think it was BBC News did a quick little 10 story about it. And
What's interesting is this is what they did with Baal worship in
The temple
yeah,
prostitutes.
Same.
Children were offered up as sacrifices, and the children were sent to be child prostitutes in the temple.
yeah,
Mhm.
same story, just different time, different place. And so that's just the link to be able to go there. And so this just goes into exactly what they're doing. And the priests are actually involved in this. So the young girls are basically auctioned off to different...
Underage.
Yes.
Wow.
All ages, underage. They're auctioned off to basically pimps. And these pimps support them. And some of them remain virgins until a specific time. But there's a dowry that's involved. Like, it's a very corrupt system. And they also have to prostitute for the temple, like what you were just saying.
Wow.
There's
You leave it to man, they're going to somehow turn it sexual. I mean,
Exactly.
this is literally where
Yeah.
it's
and
always
even
leads.
the men dress up
Yeah.
as women. Again, if you want to check that out, to just fact check me,
Yeah.
please do, because I'm not here to desecrate anybody. I'm just here to expose you to what this religion really stands for. So we're tracing the lie all the way back, and it really boils down to the biblical accounts that we've already spoken about. Satan getting cast out, him saying, I'm going to be like the Most High. These are all across the world. Now, this isn't every single one. This is as many as I could find or put on a page. But these are all the different mythologies and religions that are present or past that involve possession and it's institutionalized as religion. So this whole concept that you'll be reincarnated, that there's angel worship, that there's, dead ancestors that we need to venerate. Like, and you even see it in the Kabbalah with, Jewish mythology. And again, we know that Christianity, there are branches that believe in that.
I was about to point it out. Like, you put there sola scriptura.
Yeah.
So like those Christians who stuck with the scriptures don't have that,
No,
but
no.
other who stray away from the scriptures do.
Yes.
What I think is crazy is sitting in this seat of Earth's history. We have the history to look at,
Exactly.
and then we're looking at the Bible and we're going, now that makes sense. Wait,
Yeah.
now that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Everything's there.
Yeah.
It's open to whomever would dare pick it up and read it.
Wow.
It's not, he doesn't hide anything. Where this stuff, it's
Yeah.
hidden. It's all secret.
Yeah. Nobody gets deceived if you're sola scriptura.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you already talked about this, in Mark,
Yeah.
Mark 5. It talks about, possession. The Bible, again, talks about the state of the dead. The dead know nothing.
Right.
They're resting until Jesus comes, so don't be deceived. And mysticism is a big part of this. There's a lot of ritual rites. And notice that the Greek word mueo is properly shutting the eyes and the mouth to experience mystery.
Wow.
Shutting the eyes. Do you remember the description that I just gave you? He had the person shut every orifice and every perceptory
sense.
in order to get this divine.
Ears, eyes, nose, mouth.
And mouth.
Wow.
Yeah. And at the same time, they're doing this other thing, and I think it's called Vayu Mudra, where you're squeezing your anus.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're shutting off all, these areas
orifice.
of, yes.
Wow.
In order to get, and again, how is it that you're getting a revelation when you're shutting your eyes and mouth? Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
Faith comes by hearing, and
Yeah,
hearing by the word of God. So we
yeah.
need to hear, we need to read, we
Yeah,
need to see.
it starts to make sense. And so these are just some of the ways, some of the terms that you have for this mysticism: moksha, nirvana, ascension, Atun Yahweh, Buddhahood, gnosis, and then the different ways, because it's all about perception. It's about disturbing the chemicals in the body. So these are some of the
Altering your mind.
psychedelic drugs,
Wow.
the meditation practices. There's also a lot of nature worship. And, God talks about the fact that I am not nature. I created it, but I am the Lord. I do not change. I do not lie. Where these deceiving spirits are full of lies constantly. So we know that we have to, keep our eye on the Bible and Jesus.
Amen.
And so this just goes into Lucifer, son of the morning. And these are accounts and statements from actual occult members. And it says, there's no contradiction here, for Set is the Egyptian devil and Shiva is the Indian god of destruction. Both names, Set and Shiva, are also listed in the Satanic Bible as none other than Satan.
Wow. Shiva is.
And then Helena Blavatsky affirms, now we have but to remember that Shiva and his Palestinian Baal, or Moloch, and Saturn are identical.
Yeah.
So it's just the
Wow.
same God over and over and over
repackaged.
again. Shiva, same. The Horus in Egypt, the serpent, that then becomes, something that we see in Dionysus, which was a Greek god. And again, the sex part is there. Sex orgies, drunken,
Diana.
right. And it says drunken sex to bring about demons to actual human sacrifice.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the mother of Alexander the Great, Olympias, she was a member of this cult, and it was said that she would sleep with snakes in her
Oh.
bed.
Wow.
Yeah, and have sex and all that.
Wait, with snakes?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey,
And so
there's
this is the
Glycon.
serpent, exactly, Glycon. You see all the, it doesn't matter what pagan, religion it is, you see the same gods repeated over and over, just with a different mask.
And it's like Glycon with a lamb's head.
Yeah.
It almost looks like.
Sideswept hair.
Or whatever. It's like.
The Horus, again, is just another version of that, Horus, the Eye of Horus. this gives you knowledge. The serpent gives you knowledge. It opens your third eye.
He's the one that said, eat this fruit, your eyes will be open.
Exactly. So here, there's that focus again. It just differentiates between when you see the left eye and when you see the right eye. One is the sun, one is the moon. You see it again here in Shiva the Destroyer. You know, these are just antonyms for the same God. You can also see that same symbol in Islam. You can see it in the Hamsa. You can see it in the Eye of Providence within the Catholic faith.
Oh, wow.
You can see it again here, you know, and as you mentioned, the dollar.
Yep.
You know, it's a symbol of an occult presence, and you can see it again back in the biblical days. These are the representations of those gods. You see the sunburst star, and you see the crescent moon. These are just all the forms. I mean, I could go on and on. You can even see it here.
You see
that
a pattern.
Egyptian god. You see the horns with the solar disc.
Yeah.
You see it as the third eye of Shiva. I mean, it
in
just,
between the bull horns and
it just doesn't stop. You see it in Shriner's logo. You even see it in, you know, the emblem of Islam.
Wow.
You see it on top of their temples.
Right.
And you know, I'll go just wind it up here because I could literally keep going over and over. And you just see these gods, they just morph from one culture to the next, to the next, to the next. And each one dies. And then you see the eye and the triangle, the hexagram.
Wow.
And Aleister Crowley, he
With
has
the
it on
sun behind it.
Yeah. Wow.
And again, the transgender nature of the gods.
Right.
You know, you see it in Baphomet, you see it in Sri Devi, you see it here, Shiva. You know, it's all over the place.
Right.
And it just doesn't stop.
Wow.
The occult and serpents and the moon and the crescent moon and the sun solar disk, it just never ends. It's a common thread through everybody.
Wow.
If you look at the Hindu version of Shiva and you go to the Greco-Roman version of Isis, doesn't she look just like Shiva?
Yeah.
If you go to Isis from Egypt, is she not the same as these?
Disc on the head.
And if you go to the bull, the holy
Of
bull,
Baal?
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
then it's even been morphed into Christianity where you have
Jesus with a disc?
yeah.
Yeah.
halos and
and that's
stuff
that
behind your
Christ
head.
consciousness.
Yeah.
Again, these are all the places Satan has fed this lie to.
Wow.
So I just really hope that people would learn that, you know, idolatry, yoga, it's a dangerous practice. It's not limited
It's an
to
entering
this.
wedge.
I mean, we can go on for hours. I'm just going to sum it up here and just hopefully you know that, again, I love every single nation, culture, people. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I think we need to make a statement because we've been having some messages from very sincere Catholics about some, you know, sometimes we talk about, you know, the idea of Catholicism and connect it with, you know, when we show up these pagan symbolisms. And that is because, like we said before, there you can look it up in history that paganism and at the time Christianity was merged, that out of it came Catholicism. Yeah. But we don't hate on Catholics. Like I said, I went to a Catholic church. I went through the childhood communion. I had the rosary, didn't know what to do with it, but I was in that church for a little while. My grandparents were part of it. My mom came with me and took us there. And so we don't hate on Catholics. We don't hate on any, you know, we mentioned something about Pentecostals in here. We don't hate on them.
No.
Like you said, all we are wanting to do is reveal the truth so people can come to sola scriptura, Jesus, and the scriptures alone, and worship him in truth. That's just what I want to point out, that we love all people from all religions.
It's the doctrine that's going to lead us to a misunderstanding.
Yes.
And it's going to rob us from our right, the inheritance of the kingdom.
Exactly.
And we should be watchmen. We should be looking out for each other.
Yeah.
And we should not just look to the form of godliness and think that that is our salvation. It's not. And so even for me, if I found something in my faith that was not right, I would bring it to light because I would hope for correction. The goal is to testify of Christ, not of a aberration or, you know,
denomination.
a denomination or you know, here's your version of it. That's
Exactly.
not it. It's the Bible and the Bible alone.
Yeah, so I hope you at home, if you are listening to this and maybe feel offended, please don't. We really mean this in a loving way and a caring way to just reveal to people the truth, which is Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life.
Amen.
Amen. And that's why the show is called Light Exposing Darkness, because we care so much about deception. We don't want people to be deceived. I think all of us here have been deceived at some point in time, or even opening up about that. I thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Blessings, for sharing your personal story. Nobody can deny your own journey. This is what you've discovered. This is where God has brought you where you're at today. And I know there's a lot of people that are going down this road. And so I pray that this has been eye-opening. It's been eye-opening to me to see all this stuff. And I just pray that if you know somebody that's even considering going to yoga because they have back pain or whatever, show them this information so that they can make an intelligent decision whether they should do this or not. There's many different ways to help your back pain or whatever. There's many different ways to do stretching without involving chants and prayer and all these things. We are trying to show people how to not be deceived. And so if you enjoyed this, or if you were blessed by this episode, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and share this with your family and friends. If you want to support this ministry, you can go to littlelightstudios.tv and you can do a donation there. You can go to lightwear.shop and get a cool t-shirt that helps you wear your witness, and
You
that
watch
helps
and subscribe to Little Light Kids.
Little Light Kids
That's right.
as well. It's a new channel. We need your support to help that ministry grow so that we can train up children in the way they should go.
And if you want to see more of this, because you just did a whole series, we will put a link to the series in the description below, and people can get in contact with you, because this is something that I believe you guys need to share. If you don't understand this, please watch all of her series. Blessings, you will be blessed. It's not just her name, you will actually get blessed. And help us get this word out.
We love you. We thank you. We can't do this without you. We'll see you next time on LED Live.